Hello, my name is John Macero, and tonight I will be interviewing the at-large candidates. Our first candidate tonight here is Mr. Todd Sacco. Hi, Todd.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm good. Todd, why don't you introduce yourself to the community and kind of tell them, more importantly, why are you running?
Introduce myself to the community, I think, is probably something I've done already quite enough.
I'm sure you have.
People know me, but in fairness to those who may not, my name is Todd Sacco. I'm over a half a century resident of the town of Winthrop, Massachusetts. Married to a beautiful woman named Elisa, former secretary at the Winthrop Public Schools during John Macero's time and after. Now a secretary for the administrators over in Malden.
Malden Public Schools.
Yeah, Malden Public Schools. I have two amazing boys. And I want to pause on that for a minute because one of the things that I'm very proud of, and this is kind of an old, I don't want to say why, like a parable, I guess you'd call it, or a euphemism, losing the words here, but if the saying, your children are a reflection of their parents, is true, I could not be more proud of myself and my children. My children, to a man, no matter who you ask, they will tell you they are polite, courteous, respectful, and kind children. They don't get involved in any of the talking behind people's backs or the bullying in schools. They are my wife and I's pride and joy, and it makes me proud to know that I was part of raising those two children. If I do nothing else in life, that is my greatest accomplishment. And why I'm running partly is motivated by that, by my children and by my youth. I don't know if you've heard this, John, before, but excuse me. During one of my meet and greets, I have a kind of a canned speech for my meet and greets, and I will tell the public this. I moved here from East Boston when I was 3.5 years old.
Oh, okay.
I lived in a 2-bedroom back alley house behind my grandparents. You know, literally, you'd walk out my grandparents' back door, you would take 15 steps and you'd start walking up the steps to our house. It was all asphalt, you know, the whole Italian thing. Lawn furniture that's on asphalt covered in plastic. 2 bedrooms, 5 people, 1 bath. My father was a tile setter. We moved here and I felt like, well, now I knew what Beverly Hills is. I know what Beverly Hills is. But then when I was a kid, I didn't know. But I thought it was the greatest place on earth. To me, it was like Disney World all year round. Sure. Beaches, salt marshes, and affordability. And this is what has become, to me, the biggest challenge of Winthrop is affordability. Our most important workforce cannot afford to live in the town they work in. Our teachers really can't afford to buy a house here. They have to share, they have to rent. You know, fire department, police department, all of our public service employees are either having to find work outside of town to live here or live outside of town to work here. Or perhaps they've married, correct, or inherited a home, but new young families are having a hard time moving here. And that's why I'm running. I'm hoping to do something to help that.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that opening. So let's get right to the other stuff that's on the ballot. I know that's a big hot item out there, which is the new fire station. How do you feel about that, Todd? The new initiative of the new fire station?
So it's funny that this is such a hot topic, first and foremost, and I'm not sure why this has become a question in the political world for the candidates anyway, because we're not on the council. I am for the new fire station, but again, I'm not sure why my opinion is so important. I'm just like you. I'm just like every other Winthrop citizen. I have a vote, you have a vote. So let me ask you, if I tell you, yes, I like it, I like the location, does that change your vote?
No, because I like it and I like the location of it as well. But I think because you're a candidate, I think it's important for people to know what your opinions are on it. And I think it's also important for the fire station, you know, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think it's important for us to understand what we are voting for as we take a look at it. But you might have had a different opinion of, I mean, are you good with the place that it's at, that they're talking about?
So let me back up a little bit. You said something important.
Right.
You said it's important for the people to know there's misinformation out there. Let's focus on the misinformation. Again, I'll go back to my opinion is irrelevant, but yes, there is misinformation out there. And to answer the question about the spot, I could make an argument against any spot that we've already vetted. I could make an argument for any spot that we've already vetted. I'll give you an example. The center, the Pauline Street location, many people just would like to refurbish that. From the jump, we don't have 100 feet from the beginning of the sidewalk back to the fire station. It's out. That right there disqualifies that location unless domain take, domain take, domain take, domain take, and these would be aggressive domain takes or hostile, and they're not really that much different, but hostile versus what we're being told right now is a friendly domain take. As far as the location, as far as this current location, there are a lot of challenges like any location. The challenge I just mentioned in the Pauline Street, the center location, there are challenges with the middle school location. The challenges here are the businesses, which it's my understanding they will be taken care of. And just to be clear, this is a fact, the businesses would be subject to that if the owner of the building sold it, regardless of who they sold it to. Any business that rents or leases in a strip mall or an office building is subject to this type of occurrence. So while we can all feel bad for them, and I do, it's not great, it's just a fact of life. And we've all dealt with the waves of life, the ups and downs. It also presents potential challenges for turning radius and that's misinformation. Again, the apron, the vehicles are going to be back 100 feet. By the time they hit the street, they're going to be just about into the turns that they need to take. From the center fire station, they're already coming down Winthrop Street, so I'm not, when they have to go to the point, so I don't have a concern about that. So do I love the location? Not necessarily, but I don't hate it. And I don't think if more people would come to the meetings and hear what the committee has to say, and besides just reading the questions online and take the tours and see.
Well, but that brings me to that point. They need a new firehouse.
Oh, 100%.
Right. So, I mean, that's the important part here, right? So we can debate over and over about where it could go. However, I'm pretty confident the fire chief has also said this is probably the best spot for it.
Yeah.
I've got to respect that. And I've got to respect where our fire department needs in those particular areas. So
I'd be a little careful to say and agree with you that it's the best spot that is available at this time. The actual ideal spot, from what I'm told from some of the retired chiefs, is up on Revere Street, going up over the hill there, right near going into the Fort Banks. Like, that was a spot that was looked at years ago, I guess.
But you have Fort Banks there.
Right. So,
and so if
that can't happen now.
And speaking of that, not to, but people have talked about, well, why don't we just move the Fort Banks to where the middle school is?
Oh, boy.
Well, it all sounds wonderful on paper,
Yes,
correct?
it does, yeah.
But that's now a $150 million
Oh, my God,
project.
that's a big project.
Because MSBA does not going to give you any money for that.
No, because they already did.
All right. Well, let's move on.
All right, good.
So I know that you were on the school committee, so you've had some experience with municipal budgets, but you want to talk about what those experiences are or how you've dealt with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned that I served in the school committee. I was happily serving when you were superintendent.
That
In
is
fact,
correct.
I was part of the team that hired you.
That
In
is
fact,
true.
I
Full disclosure, that is true.
That's right. I enthusiastically, full-throated supported you, as I recall. So my experience with municipal budgets is 4 years vast, I guess, if that's the word you want to use, but it's with the most complex budgets in all municipal budgeting, which is education.
Correct.
And you could spend, as a committeeman, you could spend 10 years on a school committee and still not know everything about the budget inside and out. And that's why business managers or really good chief financial officers are so important. But I was part of 4 rounds of budgeting. I was part of 2 rounds of contract negotiations. I understand my weaknesses, right? I'm not an accountant. I didn't study that. I'm more of a big idea guy. So I knew to leverage my support, my business manager, my CFO. I was on the negotiating team. I helped find money in our budget. You may recall, during my time on the school committee, we lowered user fees. We implemented a bus program. We made full-day kindergarten free. We settled the teacher's contract, and we increased revenues to the budget We added Latin. We brought back music. And I want to say there was one more, writing. We brought back a writing program, and this was under the Linda Bro when she was the principal of the high school. And we did all this without laying off a single teacher.
Gail Conlon.
I'm sorry, Gail Conlon, you're correct.
Linda's your sister.
Yep.
You got it.
I was close, though.
Yeah, you were.
Sorry, Linda. Sorry, Gail. But anyway, you threw the curveball.
No, it's okay. No, I mean,
I have that experience.
Right.
You know, I know I've been through it. I've been through all the budget cycles. I know what to expect. But,
So
and I'm
now-
not even part of it now as a counselor.
Right. So now, well, which leads me to the next question. Right. So now, as a counselor, you're elected to the council. What do you perceive your role related to the school district and the school budget?
So there really is no perception. We have no oversight on the school district. So my role is the same as any other private citizen with respect to oversight of the school district. That being said, I vote 1 of 9 to appropriate or respond to the school committees and the superintendent's request for money. We are presented with what level services, needs-based, and then the pie in the sky, or the grand,
Usually,
the grand finale.
but a lot of times, by the time the budget gets to you, I would imagine, if I recall, it's already been vetted through the school committee, and maybe that's how it was years ago. Maybe that's changed, and then the town manager has put their stamp on it, right? That says this is what's going to go there.
If that's how it is now, really kind of the same thing anyway. We're still just voting.
And I do know
and
I do know in Winthrop, the finance committee met with the superintendent quite a bit, and they still do that. And there's a lot of discussion that goes on, and then those folks from the city council could come in attendance unless they're on the finance committee, with that group.
Well, and that's so kind of an offshoot of what we're talking about here. I would like to be on the finance committee, and I also. Should I be elected, I also want to be part of all the negotiation teams with the MWRA and the Massport. We have those mitigation packages coming up, and we've got some ideas on how to try to make things a little bit better here in Winthrop. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
We all should have windows. All of us should have new windows and soundproofing wherever we want. That's the least.
When you say all of us, you mean the whole town? The whole town.
I'm not saying that we're going to get that, but I will say this. I would happily give preference to Precinct 3 and then my precinct, Precinct 2, because we are the most impacted. We should be starting at least from Precinct 3, Cottage Hill areas, because, they're right, more down Precinct 3, more down towards, across from down Euro Beachway, but all that area is really impacted by the flights. The flights are kept up, are going on beyond the hours they're supposed to stop. So we really need to start looking at all those things.
It's funny you say that. I've been going to work out, and sometimes I go at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I see a plane flying over, and I'm like,
not supposed to be happening.
Yeah, so it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
So, a lot of discussion about the old middle school. I know we kind of got into a little of it because of the fire house, and we're still talking about it. So what's your vision of the future of this site? I'm surprised that I still am asking that question, because we're about almost 10 years since we approved the school vote, which was in 2013.
Right, so we're what, $700,000 in the hole? 70 grand a year we're paying to keep that building minimally infested with rats, minimally, and mice and other things. We obviously have a routine de-infestation or a routine animal and pest control, but we're spending money on these things just for it to sit there and be an eyesore. So that's a problem. So $70,000 a year. First and foremost, personally, I've had a lot of ideas about what to do with that building. I don't know if it was you I mentioned it to, or maybe I was bouncing this off of Jeff Turco or maybe Lisa Howard. One of the things that's hard, we talked about our teachers living here. We own the middle school. One of the things I wanted to do a few years ago is turn it into apartments for teachers and make it part of their compensation package. We already own the building. They can pay for the heat. And again, who knows if it's feasible. I thought we should do a feasibility study to take a look at it and see if that's something that might work out for us, because we have to start getting creative and thinking outside the box. And a lot of ideas outside the box are going to seem stupid at first and might not make it down to the next, to the final 3 best ideas, but we have to start somewhere. And that's what I was thinking for that building. I talk about responsible development a lot. To me, responsible development is not building places for people to live in Winthrop. I realize we have a housing problem, but we're not going to put a dent in that in Winthrop. Unfortunately, people got to go find someplace else to live. I hate to say it, we don't have enough space here to make the kind of density to build up the kind of housing that we can sustain. So responsible development is building things that attract people to come, spend their money, and then they go home. And so this facilities idea, the sports facility,
yeah.
I believe in it to the extent that we should at least try it. Okay. And I lived the experience. So my nephew is a really good hockey player, lived up in Haverhill, played for a private Catholic school, and was in tournaments at Marlboro. When first time I went to Marlboro, there were 2 sheets of ice. The second or third time I went there, I think it was, there were 3 sheets of ice. I'm to understand now there are 7 sheets of ice. And there are hotels and restaurants around there that are thriving. So what's happening? There's tournaments that come in, they fly into Logan, and they all get rental cars or Ubers or whatever, and they're traveling to Marlboro, Framingham, whatever. We don't think some of them would come here? A quick Uber taxi ride away? I think it's worth a shot. And the best part of this is if
they're flying in, it's a great spot. If they're in the state, you don't know, right? But
right.
If they're flying in, yeah, I can see that.
So let me ask you, what do we think? What do we think the projected revenue is just for the lease? Like 150 or 170K a year? I think it's. Right. Let's call it 170 to be conservative, and you add 70 to that because we won't be spending 70 anymore. And that's a $240,000 swing in our budget to the affirmative.
Okay.
I think it's worth trying, and then allegedly, we'll be part of the success of it too. We'll get incentivized by the success of the facility.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Winthrop's initiated some additional fees in the last couple of years, and one is the annual trash fee per household. How do you feel about this, Mr. Sacco?
So before I get into my problems with it, let me just say this isn't about the $160 in the bags,
okay.
Right? Partly it's about the fact that we had a town manager previously who went ahead and signed a contract that he shouldn't have under the former council president's leadership. So the town, the councilors and the town council president and the town manager, somewhat, I want to be fair, put us in that position. The cost was going up regardless. So we need more money, I get it. Mm-hmm. But a fee is an end run around the 2.5 process. At the end of the day, I don't care if it's a penny. It's our money, and you should ask us, not tell us, how much you're going to raise it. Because you have 9 people deciding on a fee, and I believe it can only be raised like a 0.01% of the entire budget or something a year, max. They can't just willy-nilly raise it. I understand that it doesn't matter. Over time, it's just going to compound as the cost of trash goes up, the budget goes up, which means that 0.01% gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It just adds between the water rates, and I know we're going to get to that, between the water rates, taxes going up 2.5% every year, the economy we're in right now in terms of inflation and the cost of milk and eggs, it's just another way that people on a fixed income, we have a lot of retirees here, a lot of older folks that would like to remain in their homes, and they're having to move to places like the Arbors. They don't really want to. I live next door to Frank Cavalieri. He didn't want to go to the Arbors, but that was a decision that they had to make. I want to die in my bed, not to be glib or gloom, but I want to die in my bed. Is that going to be possible? I don't know. We should increase the abatement percentage for the senior citizens who live here so that they can do that. We should make them pay less because their values have gone up in their homes, but not their income. And we just keep coming back to the taxpayer over and over again, or the ratepayer. So I want to get rid of it, but I want it to be a situation where I'd like to try and remove it, and remove all fees, and have a vote, have an override to make up the money.
Okay. Okay,
right?
so that was the question I
Give
was
the-
going to have.
yeah.
So you're looking at, you would be looking at an override to
Say to the, educate the people. This is how much money we collect in fees every year, roughly. Let's vote to put this much in the budget and eliminate all those fees going forward.
Okay. So let's go to the water rates, because you mentioned it
Yeah.
earlier. And I know that that seems to always be a hot issue. And we always know when the water rates are coming out, because I know 2 days before it's coming just because I'll see it on Facebook, right? All of a sudden we know what's happening there. So what are your recommendations regarding the current rates, and how do you help defray any additional increases, and what has been going on that you might be coming across as far as the water?
So, yeah. First of all, the biggest expense is infrastructure. We have, oh God, I forget the number of water mains. We have a lot of water mains that they all need to be replaced. We've been working through that, and that's the bulk of the increases. But as far as I'm concerned, like I've always said, the sins of the past get paid for in the future. And the sins of the past is all those years we neglected maintenance and moved the money into places we shouldn't have, and those mains weren't getting checked in a timely way. They weren't getting repaired or brought up to speed. And so now we are so far behind, we're having to fix them all at once. Preventative maintenance, routine maintenance is something municipalities cannot do because they don't have the will to do it. Because it takes someone, or actually in our case, it's going to take 5 people.
Do they not have the will, or do they not have the funding?
No, they don't have the will.
Okay.
At the end of the day, and we'll get to that question,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the town of Winthrop has said, here's what you have. Your wife's customers say, the number of customers you get is the number of customers you get. If you can't afford to keep your lights on, you're done. Right? So we have the funding we have. If we want to increase it, we have to be very transparent with the public, tell them why we're increasing it, exactly where every dollar of it goes, why we're doing it. And I believe if we are fully transparent, we'll be a little bit more successful with 2.5 overrides. Or potential, but I don't want to go there right now.
I was going to say, this is the second time you've talked about overrides.
I know.
So, but what's interesting about that is that when you're talking about the override, what you're, I kind of understand, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or
No,
not.
go ahead.
What you're saying is that, look, we understand you get fees, we understand that we have these issues, but if we're transparent about those, why are we doing it this way? Let's just tell you what those costs are, and let's go for that override.
Right. And
So that everybody understands, kind of back when we did that menu item.
right.
Okay.
I think John, if I may,
Yeah.
the people of Winthrop, it's our money. And if we don't give you enough, I know what I'm going to do. Let me answer the question this way. If the town of Winthrop says, you're giving us this much money, and that's it, and I see expenditures that I have to vote on that I know are going to put me in year 2 and 3 out of it, I'm going to vote no. The town said this is how much, end of story. The more control the people have over the money, the better it is for our local government.
Well,
it's their money.
Right, and it's an interesting point, because some people have talked about it, and I'm not talking about here, it could be where I work and all of that, but you know,
Sure.
we're at a point where we're at now where we should be looking at overrides every year, because there are different expenses that you come up, and whether or not we have to vote for them or not. You know, whether that's a decision that the residents need to make, right? So that's just something that was said on it, so.
I'm so glad you said that. I have been saying that for years. In fact, I forget what meeting it was, but I think it was a school committee meeting in the high school auditorium. Terry Delahanty was there. I believe it was a school committee meeting, and I stood up and said, what we're doing here, I don't even remember what we were talking about, quite frankly, but I do remember saying what we're doing here is a complete waste of time until we come to the realization that if we're going to continue to do business the way we do it, we need an override every year.
Well,
If we want to add programs, let's put it simply. If we want to add programs back to the school, if we want to maintain our buildings, if we want to maintain our sidewalks, if we want to hire and retain the best people, we either need to override every year, or we need to find streams of revenue.
Well, and it's something that they do down south a lot that you'll see is, you know, when I talk about south, you'll see like they'll vote for school board and stuff, but they always have the budget on. They vote for that budget, the community, not just the people that are there.
Well, if you're talking Boca Raton or some of these other big bucks.
Well, I don't know. Well, we got about 5 minutes, so I want to keep moving on here.
Sure.
So if you're elected, you're one person out of 9 in the town council, right? I mean, that's what it is. But you might be very passionate about some of the things that you talked about here.
Yeah.
How do you get your colleagues to support your initiatives?
It was like when I worked on the school committee. I had to get, what were we, 4? I needed 4 votes. The first thing I always do is see who has interest in the initiative, then understand their feelings on it, and then if we have to change the policy or the initiative a little bit to fit what they're looking for. I mean, you basically corral votes by gaining consensus. You gain consensus by making sure everybody's interests in the particular topic are met, right? You gain consensus. So for instance, if I wanted to eliminate the user fees and all the fees and have the citizens vote to do that, I would have to talk to my colleagues and figure out who thinks it's a good idea and who would go for it with me. And then if it doesn't happen, you move on to the next thing.
Okay, okay. And what communication tools are you going to use with the residents? You know, because a lot of times we hear that, oh, I don't know what they're talking about, you know, nobody tells us anything or things like that. And it's a common occurrence, but yet people are trying. So what?
That's a great question. And if you remember, a certain baseball player walked up to the plate one day and pointed to was it the right field fence or the left field fence? I'm about to do that right now.
Okay.
I'm going to be the only candidate, the only town councilor ever to have a show on Facebook every week where I will be there sharing what I can from the meetings, taking phone calls, taking questions. That's the way I will communicate very differently with the community than others. I know there are some who like to do the coffee with the counselors or some of those other, you know, kind of community meetings. They're hard. They're hard. People's schedules are busy. The internet's, I think, the best way to do it, and you'll get more participation. And sure, I'll do coffees and things like that as well.
You do some Zoom meetings?
Yeah, why not? I mean, whatever people want. I do get disappointed in the level of community participation because the only way real change happens is when the community's involved before it's too late, right? Like, let's make an example. I mean, pick an example of you know, Jim Lettieri's election was a very big win. It sends a message, and that's political capital. It was like George Bush, Ronald Reagan's win. He had a lot of political capital. I think this community is going to come out pretty big in this election because of the fire station and just because of the buzz I'm hearing on the streets, you know, in every corner about the fact that people are tired of the fees, they're tired of costs going up, they're tired of the lack of transparency, and I'm not suggesting there is a lack of transparency, the perceived or otherwise there is, but there's a feeling out there.
So how do you build that trust?
Well, I think I've already got it in many places.
Okay.
Because
and how have you done that? How have you built that trust?
Through exposing our government, in the past 2 years, exposing our government for some of the things they were doing that weren't necessarily untoward, but they certainly weren't above board and fully communicated out to the community. And I opened people's eyes to, you know, there was an incident with the former town manager. I can't get into details about it, but I was able to blow the lid off that thing and get it out there that there was some inappropriate conduct. And that inappropriate conduct ended up costing us some money on the way out the door, by the way. So that's what people are tired of in this town. They may not talk about it in every circle, but they feel comfortable telling me about it.
And so the town manager that we currently have, he's sent us out that Thursday newsletter.
Yes.
And that stuff. And do you feel that's a good communication tool from his perspective?
I mean, it's an email, right, that goes out?
It's an email, but then you click on it and it has the full of what's going on.
I think it is a very informational tool. I think it serves its purpose in terms of it's there, and some people do check their emails. Like, I do check my emails, but I get so many that I'll lose a lot of them.
Well, that's true. People are looking more at the text.
Texting.
All right, we got one more question, and then I want to give you an opportunity. So I want you to give us 3 words that best describe you and why.
Passionate, committed, and aware. Passionate, I think it's pretty obvious, right? Like, You can see it, you can feel it. It's who I am. And I'm passionate about the town. I've always been passionate about the kids and doing what's right for the children. I'm passionate about the community, right? Best communities are built around their churches, synagogues, families of all shapes and sizes, all make the best communities when they're in the community. And I think I just sounded like a vice president. But when they're out, you know, participating in community events and being neighborly and those sorts of things, committed. I've been up every morning at the bridge waving to the voters of Winthrop out of town. I've been door to door just about every day. I've been making phone calls. I've been serving. I've been involved for over 20 years and politically active. As you know, you and I work together. Aware. So growth. A lot of people had a lot of things to say about who I am, but they can't see the growth that I've made. I'm aware because I know where my weaknesses are. I know the things I need to improve upon. I've shared it with the public. I've owned it, and I'm doing it.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to give you an opportunity for any closing statement that you'd like, and you might want to talk into that camera.
I will happily talk into that camera. Thank you for watching tonight. I hope I've earned your vote tonight. Please make sure, if I have, you get out and vote on November 7th. Thank you.
And I want to thank you all for watching. Just a reminder, November 7th is Election Day, so please get out and vote. Also, on November 7th at 7:30 p.m., Eric Gaynor and I will be hosting Election Night, so please tune in. Thank you. And we're back. My next candidate at large, Max Tassinari. Welcome, Max.
Thanks, Sean.
So, Max, why don't you I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk to the community, tell them why you're running.
Gladly, gladly. My name's Max Tassinari. I'm running for town council at large. I'd very much appreciate your vote on November 7th. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm a resident of Winthrop. This is where my wife and I chose to raise our family. This is where our roots will be. This is where our present and our future are. And I'm invested in this community, and that's really why I want to run for this seat. I look around the town and I see that we have a lot of big, powerful neighbors, namely the City of Boston, City of Revere, Massport, MWRA. But what I don't see is a lot of advocacy outside of our town borders. I want to bring that to the town council. I have a 15-year career in accounting, finance, and budgeting. 6 of those have been spent at a state agency. And I've built my career on expertise, hard work, and integrity. And I've made a lot of good friends and relationships over the years, and I want to bring those relationships to bear for the town so that we can start punching above our weight, bringing funding in from federal and state sources, so that we can advocate outside of our borders for better treatment, and so that we really can improve the quality of life here in the town. And that's why I'm running. I'm running for my children, I'm running for my family, I'm running for you, for your children, for all of our families, for all of our seniors, for everyone who lives in this town.
Thank you, Max. So, Max, as you're aware, that the town has a question on the ballot regarding the new fire station. Do you support this initiative?
I am supportive of the new fire station, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to look a firefighter in the eye and say $40 million from the town to improve our public safety is not worth their life. And at the end of the day, there are too many folks in our fire department suffering from cancer and other diseases that we can decrease the rate of infection or the rate of getting sick by providing them with adequate resources.
So how are you with where they want to put the fire station?
I don't think we have a choice.
Okay.
We don't have a choice on that. But what I will say is I think that we would have benefited from a wider community process.
Okay.
5 months to digest a $40 million investment in a town this size is not a lot of time. That's a big pill for the taxpayer to swallow. And frankly, I don't think doing things on an emergency basis 30 years after the fact is really beneficial to the town in terms of a master plan, planning for the future, and setting ourselves up for success.
Yeah. Well, I know you're right, but I know that they've talked about, the fire station for many, many years and
Right.
what's going to happen, and now they finally have it on the ballot. And I know there's been a lot of talk in and out of the location, where it should be, why is it there? This is a historical area, all of those types of things. But there's no question that there should be a fire station with what we're talking about and listening. So, thank you.
Unfortunately, the vote is only for that location
Right.
and for the debt override. I will say this, there may be opportunities that present themselves after the fact to bring funding in from the outside once we have approved that
Well, that's
debt
true
on the
because
ballot. So,
because when you build the school, you get that MSBA
yeah,
portion, but they don't allow any of that for town public buildings, which they should start to look at those types of funding.
So there is federal money out there for public safety buildings.
Okay,
So
good.
I think once we get this across the finish line, we'll probably have the town manager take another look at what's available, what's out there, and what we can do to support our fire and basically all of our departments.
So you talk a lot about your experience with finance and stuff. How about municipal budgets? Do you have any experience?
So a
with
municipal
those?
budget's not that much different from a state budget. Everyone's
Okay.
got to play by the same rules. In fact, the municipal budget is a little bit more stringent than, especially in procurement, than what the state has to do. It still all comes down to what you take in, what you can put out. It's not rocket science, but there's a lot of nuances in there that I do understand, having those 6 years of state finance. I think we have a lot of opportunities in this town to increase our revenues from state and federal sources. I think that the current town manager's done a great job in promoting, going out and getting that federal and state money. I think there's a lot more we could do. I think there's a lot more resources that the town could put into that, because that's one of those things when we talk about fiscal responsibility, where an investment will really pay off for us in the short term and the long term. That is bringing money in from federal sources to do infrastructure projects or to do like school subsidies, stuff like that.
Right.
That will free up other money in the budget that we can put towards public works, so we could grow the pie, so to speak, so that everybody gets a little more.
Okay, so you worked 5 or 6 years in the state on state budgets.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. And you
And
worked.
so,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
so our budget that I manage now is over $300 million. It's not a joke. It's a statewide agency. It's tons of infrastructure. It's a large operating budget with several employees. We're up to like 900, almost 1,000 full-time employees. It's a real business. It's a real business, and that's the kind of lens that I want to bring to the council when we go to do that budget review.
Okay, thank you. So as a council member, we'll stick with budget for a second, but what do you perceive your role as related to the school budget and the school district?
So from what I've researched and learned from other counselors, from the council president and current and former school committee members, the council's responsibility is to basically appropriate a lump sum to the school committee. And then the school committee, the superintendent, and the school CFOs work to parse that out where it's appropriately, like where it's needed, where the resources are best used. But as a counselor, I would be a strong advocate, like I said a minute ago, in growing the pie. So the more money we can bring into the town, the more money we can allocate to each of our departments. The schools being, you know, one of the most important because that's really our future. Educating our children is, you know, top priority. Top priority for me as a parent myself, with one child about to matriculate into Fort Banks kindergarten. So that's going to be an interesting change of pace in my house. And then a second, my daughter was 2 years behind. So providing our children with the best possible education, that's always top of mind for me. And I always want to see public school systems get the best resources available. And part of that is advocating for increased revenue.
Great. The, you know, there's been a lot of discussion regarding the old middle school. And it's, as I've said in previous conversations, I'm surprised we're still talking about the old middle school.
8 years, is that what it is?
It's been 8 years
yeah.
since we, well, yes, 8 years since we've opened. In 2014, it'll be 8 years since we finally left that building to go into the new high school, middle school. Do you have any vision for that site? Do you have any ideas of what you would like to do with it? I know that the town council president has proposed some ideas. What are your thoughts?
So I don't think that the town council president's idea is a bad idea. I think it's something that we should explore and get more information on, to see if there's interested parties in doing that kind of business in this town. But I also think that we need to revisit the 2017, 2018 Citizens Committee results. They did there was a lot of, hundreds of people involved in that, and a lot of like citizen volunteer hours were put into developing a plan for that site that's kind of been put on the back burner. I mean, we haven't seen much of what those results were. I think we need to bring that out of the closet, dust it off, and try to recruit some new volunteers to refresh it and get some new ideas from the citizens around town. I don't want to see the middle school being another fire station where we're doing it at like the 25th hour and it needs to be done because it needs to be done. We shouldn't be making decisions in an emergency, like those kind of investment decisions in an emergency situation.
Okay.
That's not a good way to plan for the future of the town.
So you want to take a look at what those other ideas were back in 17 and 18
Yeah.
and see what the thoughts were on that.
See what the thoughts were.
And then compare it to what the council president has also proposed.
Well, we should include that council president's proposal in those ideas, but we also want to refresh, give the current population of Winthrop, because there's been a lot of changeover, current population of Winthrop a chance to contribute to what those ideas might be, what they would want to see down there. I long-time residents and brand new residents all want to tell me how much they want a pool in town.
I've heard that quite a bit, yes.
I'll tell you this though, pools are very expensive to operate. The water isn't cheap, especially in our town. The chemicals aren't cheap. We've seen I'd say like a 40% increase in costs on pool chemicals that we buy at the state level. That's a big jump,
Yeah.
especially for a town like ours with limited revenue resources.
But it is true, there's been a lot, I do know, I remember when we were building the new middle high school, and that was a hot item, right? But what are we going to do with this area? And one of the things was people wanted a pool. They wanted a pool. They don't, you know, they wanted that opportunity. You have a pool in Revere at the Garfield, but people were very, you know, can we have a pool? So, but I don't think it's great to say, can we have it? But then you have to, like you said, you got to take a look at all the expenses.
We have to maintain it. We'd have to staff it. There are a lot of facets to look at when.
But are people, but within those fees that people would pay to participate in that pool, would that take care of that? I guess that's some of those things that they would have to analyze.
Yeah, that's a much deeper dive. We're getting
Right.
way in the weeds on that because
Right.
we really we don't even have a pool on the table right
Exactly,
now. You know?
exactly. So see, we can get right back into that pool talk. So let's talk about fees. And over the last couple of years, the town has implemented an annual trash fee per household. And, you know, there's been some talk about that. How do you feel about those fees?
I mean, I'm right there with everyone else. I don't like paying them, right?
Yeah.
But I understand we always have to have our trash pick. We're gonna have to have trash pickup. There's limited possibilities for how we pay for that. If we don't pay for it with a trash fee, that means something else in the budget will be reduced in order to pay for that trash collection, and then you know, something else will suffer. What I really don't like about the trash fee is the fact that we really didn't get any input in that trash fee.
Okay.
Okay, so there wasn't a lot of time or space made for public comment on that trash fee, and it's just one more piece of the puzzle where people feel a little bit of a disconnect between their town government and their everyday life, and I think we're seeing a similar reaction to the presentation of the fire station.
Okay, so in regards to that trash fee, it kind of just appeared to the residents from their perspective.
That's what the perspective is. Yeah. It
And
kinda
then
just
I
appeared.
did notice that over the course of this past year, they decided to cut that. You know, they'll do it and
Split it.
split it, so
Yeah.
that therefore it might be better for people on what they're doing. And then they also added the bags.
The excess.
Yeah, so if you go over that, and then they put
Yeah,
that-
I don't know. I'm gonna have to see what's left in my own personal budget for Christmas Eve because we're gonna need a few of those overflow bags at my house.
So what about the water rates? Those always seem to be a hot issue, you know.
The water, yeah.
We can tell when
Yeah.
the water rates come out, right? The mailing comes out, and all of a sudden, Facebook lights up, and it's, oh, what's going on this? So I guess the question is, you know, I'm hearing a lot of different things that they're realizing about infrastructure and stuff like that. But what do you have any recommendations regarding how the current rates are and what we can do to help defray any of those additional costs?
So I'll tell you this. That water bill. I'm reminded of that water bill almost every day. I fill up that bathtub two times, right? Once for each kid, and sometimes the water runs longer than I want it to run. To be honest with you, because who doesn't want me to shut it off, and who wants to drink from the faucet? Mayhem. In terms of lowering the cost for everybody in town, I think we really need to understand what that water bill is paying for. I think we should probably have informational session or some kind of way to disseminate the information of what we're paying for on that water bill. A lot of it does come down to the infrastructure, how we're basically losing about $1 million in water a year from old faulty main lines. And that would be one of the projects that I would go and seek federal and state funding for.
Okay.
Because there is a good chunk of funding available to municipalities from the bipartisan infrastructure law that that can help do water main replacement.
So how does that work?
For our town, I would first recommend a technical assistant grant,
Okay.
because right now we don't have the capacity to be writing those large federal grants. So the first thing we would try to get is either funding from the federal government for a grant writer, or direct assistance within a federal agency that they sometimes are able to assign federal employees to help work a case for a town. And then we would put in for either a competitive grant, or it would probably be a competitive grant in this case. We would apply for that, and you just kind of wait until they say yes or no. And then in terms of advocating, we have a very strong advocate for the area not far away, who has a prominent position within our Congress. I mean, I know that could be a hot topic today because we still are waiting for a speaker, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard that they've elected a speaker yet. But
Right. But having good advocates that we can reach out to will make a difference in terms of being able to close out on one of those grants.
Okay. So we do talk a lot about Winthrop, and Winthrop has this revenue issue, right? Because we're a small, peninsula. There's not a lot of revenue coming into the town, but people are trying to constantly bring some ideas. Do you have any ideas you bring to the table for the town to earn more revenue?
One thing I don't want to see done is I really don't want to ask the taxpayers in town to dig deeper, because we're doing that every year, and there's only so far you can dig in your own pocket. So that's why I think it's really important to advocate outside, to bring in outside funding from the federal and state government. There's a lot of money to be had out there, and most of it's and we have our own fair share of that for what we pay in income taxes. We're not getting our fair share of that right now.
So you feel that we're just, and part of why we're not getting that is because we're not requesting it. We're not applying for it.
Applying for and requesting it have become more and more popular in town now with the current town manager. I went to his presentation the other night, and I was able to meet Meredith Hurley, who's doing a lot of grants for public health, which is great. But what we don't have is a real strong grants unit in the town, and that's something that I believe we should be investing in. And the current grant writers that work for the town are a bit spread out, and they don't have a lot of constant communication with each other on how they could support each other or help one another identify opportunities. That's something that we should try to grow and invest in, so that we can, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, we can grow this pie. We need to grow the pie without asking our taxpayers to dig even deeper. We need to punch above our weight class when it comes to advocating for funding from our federal and state partners.
So are you talking about when you're bringing in these grants would be for capital improvements or
there's a lot of money for capital type
as
stuff,
opposed to personnel, because
if we're allowed to bring in a federal grant to pay for a capital project, right? That should open up funding to pay on the operating side.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Right.
So that's how we grow the pie. That's what I mean.
Okay.
It's a little
'Cause I
bit of
know
a budgetary nuance where you're shifting.
Right. I know we're trying.
Expenses.
We talk about, with grants that come in, and unfortunately, I think through the years, systems have become reliant on those grants, and those
It's true.
grants have taken care of personnel sometimes. And so what we've done
that's okay.
is yes, but what we've tried to do through the years now is pull the personnel out of it
Yep.
and get them into that fixed, your operating budget, so that we can maybe look at those grants to utilize them for
Other things.
things such as the capital and
Yeah,
stuff.
there are a lot of different types of grants. One example is a formulaic grant where once you're in the program, based on the population that you serve, you're able to almost automatically get that money as long as you put in the application and provide the information that is asked of you. Those are what they call formulaic grants. It's a little bit detailed, but that's one of those things I think that the town is benefiting from now in the school system.
Okay, great. So if elected, you're one person out of 9 on the town council, but you've got an idea, you want to get this through. What steps and strategies are you going to use to see if you can get your initiatives passed?
That's a good question, and it really comes down to collaboration and cooperation with fellow councilors. That starts with a good dialogue, being open-minded to other folks' ideas, how they think they could improve what I'm presenting, trying to obviously recruit the town council president, because that's carries a lot of weight on the council, bringing things to vote. I think it really comes down to communication and collaboration, and that's not just something that I would apply to council dealings, but I'd want to see more communication and collaboration from the council and from the town to the general citizens of Winthrop. I think that the lack of communication is something that is felt by many of the citizens, and I think sometimes it feels like the council operates behind closed doors. I'd like to spend more time communicating to folks.
And how would you do that?
One example is I would leave my Facebook page open to post relevant updates. I'd advocate for an updated and more intuitive website. The website's great, has a lot of information. Sometimes it's not easy to find. So giving that an update, making it more intuitive, making it a little more accessible too, to folks who maybe aren't able to read it online, or giving it that accessibility update. Another thing that I'd like to do is hold, monthly coffee hours. Different places around town on a weekend morning, hang out. We have like really great breakfast places in this town. There's not one I've been to that I haven't liked. And just letting folks know where I'll be so I can hear what their concerns are. So being accessible, being open-minded, being collaborative, and like we talked about when we talked about the middle school idea, it's like bringing people in and giving them a voice.
Yeah, I heard this once, and it's so true, is that, there are, out of our community, really 2% pay attention to what's going on in town government. But out of that 2%, 98% of that 2% are very vocal. So, and sometimes we're not hearing everybody, right? We're hearing those that are being vocal. And so what occurs is that you have, people are complaining because they don't know what's going on, but it's difficult to get that information out to people. You're meeting every other week, for a town council meeting, and we do have it on WCAT. You can watch it, and they can see it in other areas as well. But yeah, I've always found that it's no matter how much you try and push, what are the best ways to do it? That's why I ask people, what are you going to do about communicating?
The world is a lot different than it used to be, because in days long past, everybody would be reading a copy of a local newspaper. Everybody in the town. So that was a great form of simple communication, and that's still a good way of communication. A lot of people still pick up the Winthrop transcript and read it, cover to cover. We shouldn't abandon those forms of communication just because the audience isn't always there. So that would be another place that we could put information. And likewise, WCAT. That's another good place for community. Maybe something like this every once in a while to get some information out to the town. Yeah. And again, this stuff all goes on YouTube, so it's shareable on the internet as well. So that's that was one I haven't thought of. So that's good. Thank you.
All right. So now what I like to ask here is, give me 3 words that best describe you. Just 3 words now, and why?
I think the best 3 words that describe me are dad, husband, and advocate. Mostly because, to me, and I know a lot of other people out there, family is the most important thing. We've got to take care of our family, and we've got to make sure that our successes are shared. So, again, it's growing that pie. It's bringing other people up with you, and that's where the advocacy comes in, where I always want to promote what's best for as many folks as possible, and that's where I would want to reach outside the town to pull in our state senator, pull in our state rep, to pull in city governments that neighbor us, to recruit folks to advocate with us and for us when it comes to negotiations with other neighbors such as Massport, MWRA, to advocate for us when it comes to federal and state funding, to advocate for us when it comes to traffic issues getting in and out of town. There's only 2 lanes to get in and only 2 lanes to get out. It's not easy in
And
the
they're making it a
mornings.
little harder sometimes trying to get out on Revere Beach side.
They're making it a little harder.
But it's going to be done
but
eventually.
It's going to be done eventually, and the folks, and we're all going to benefit from it because it'll be an update to our infrastructure, update to
Right.
our gas delivery and water delivery. It's hard to live through it, though.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And the folks who live over there on Revere Street are feeling the pain more than anyone else. And I've heard about it. So
Well, we had to deal with that with the beach, though, too. So it was, we went through
on the
those.
renourishment.
Yeah,
Yep.
we went through that for a
Yep.
couple of years, but we're very happy about it now.
Right.
That it's done its purpose. I know people talk about how it, all the different ways the beach, but it's done what the main focus was. That water's no longer coming over the wall and coming
Right.
down our streets, so our
Right.
houses feel protected.
Right.
So. Well, thank you so much. I want to give you an opportunity for a closing statement if you'd like.
Sure. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, WCAT, for giving me this opportunity. I hope that what you've learned from me tonight, you'll feel more comfortable casting your vote November 7th for me, Max Tassinari, on that ballot. Thank you again. Good night.
So I want to thank you all for watching. I just want to remind you all, November 7th is coming up, and please make sure that you get out to vote. Also on November 7th at 7:30, we will have an election show hosted by myself and Eric Gaynor. So we hope that you will tune in. So with that, don't forget to vote. Thank you.